So this morning we went to a protest, very important protest in Fort Lauderdale for a man named Kevin Desir. And as Jen has mentioned many times, one of the three most important issues that she fights for is criminal justice reform. And needless to say, this is a class A example of why that is such. So why don't you share with the audience what happened today?
Okay, so this is about a gentleman who was killed while in BSO custody. I uploaded a little brief video today from the event that we were at, but this gentleman was arrested on a possession of marijuana charge and was in BSO custody. My understanding is that he was also suffering from some type of mental illness or some sort of trauma or something. And now he's dead. And mysteriously, the tapes that monitor every inch of space of that jail somehow just aren't available for the family to see the tapes of what happened, which is interesting because every inch of that place has some sort of camera monitoring it. So this gentleman is now dead on a possession of marijuana charge. And the truth is, I really wouldn't care what the charge is. He could be in there for, a murder charge. But my point is that that's outrageous. This is a completely nonviolent individual. And so today his family held a press conference in front of the courthouse. And I was there. There was a lot of people there.
I'd say at least 100. Yeah.
And that was great. And here's the big problem. Okay. This is really a message to the white people. And I say this wholeheartedly. Where the fuck are you? I think there were 5 white people, including us, maybe, at this event, which was a very public event. Everybody could have known about it. It was posted on multiple sites. I'm not privy to secret information. I know organizations were putting the word out about this. And so I don't understand. And it's really, to me, it's like salt on a wound when I show up at an event that has to do with human rights, civil rights, and justice, and there's no white people there. Because let me be very clear, about the racism issue. And I really don't care about everybody's personal status if they're racist. I have a lot of friends that are not racist per se, okay? But
racially insensitive is the word.
Well, and maybe that, whatever, that's neither here nor there. But that's not the point. The point is we have to recognize that we are all beneficiaries of a very racist system. And it is our responsibility as the people with the upper hand in that racist system to undo what we've done, okay? It is not the responsibility of Black people to fix this and gain equal rights and gain this is not their job. So this is our problem. And so when I go to something like that and there's a handful of white people for a situation that occurred in BSO custody, that's Broward Sheriff's Office. So if you're a person who lives in Broward County, you should be outraged that this would happen in the custody of an elected official's custody. It's infuriating to me. So yeah, we're the white people. That's what I wanted to know. That was my rant for today. And I just, pay attention, people.
Unfortunately, for a lot of people, when it's not being promoted by, corporate media, when it's not being promoted by active candidates running for office, when it's not being promoted by the party, this is when you really find out who's interested in serving the communities that desperately need help.
Because this was in the news.
Correct.
That this happened. This was in the news. I had known this had happened before even knowing about this event. So again, this was not top secret information. People, pay attention. Seriously, this is happening in our, and by the way, I'd like to refer people back to what happened with Tammy Jackson, who was a friend of mine, who was a woman who also had mental illness and had, often was homeless. And she was forced to give birth alone on the floor of a jail cell, screaming for help for 6 hours while they listened to her in custody. That was BSO custody as well. This is a problem.
When we talk about systemic racism, I mean, the thing that I pointed out to Jen being there today was the calmness and collectiveness of Desir's family. I don't know how they kept it together. His mother definitely did her best, but eventually she lost it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I mean,
I
you know, it's just hard to fathom that
that woman. It's heartbreaking, and it's just I can't even.
Well, I think we can move into news and Amuse, and
Yeah.
I'm going to pull that up because the reason why this has become the reason why this has become such a contentious story, it's the easiest way that I can explain this is, you know, everyone always says that, you know, the crime is bad, but the lie is worse. And this is a case where the lie is worse. So why is the lie worse? The lie is worse because in the middle of this image you see is the sheriff of Broward County, Gregory Tony.
That's him. That's
so
Broward sheriff.
Gregory Tony, unfortunately, has a very not so good reputation as a law enforcement officer. He has a very checkered history that people have been really looking into hard, not just you know, prior to this recent election. But what people have to remember is that he was appointed to office. He was not elected initially. He was appointed by Governor DeSantis. And there's a lot of interesting things surrounding that and wondering how he ultimately came to power. Now, we're not going to dive too deep into the weeds as to how that happened. But what we will say is that here's a man who just said to the media, basically, I did my own investigation and we found we did nothing wrong.
Can't make this shit up, man.
And so not only did he do that, but here's the real kicker. The Broward County Sheriff's Office has cameras. And there is video footage of what happened to Kevin Desir. They are refusing to release the footage.
Of course they are.
What that tells me is that there was a crime committed and they do not want people to know about it. So now, since no one is paying attention to this, no Democratic elected officials in Broward County, you know who you are.
Where are these people?
They're nowhere because this isn't it's not good for their career. And
Harold Pryor, our new state attorney,
is the one person.
Yes.
Harold Pryor, who is very friendly with Jen, and
I do think Gordon Weeks said something about this as well. And
we'll
I'm not exactly sure, but
I
do know that Gordon Weeks did say something about this, and so I'm not going to.
But at least to Harold's credit, he said there does need to be an independent investigation into this. But the idea that that even needs to be said is amazing. And Jen, if you'd like to share your amuse about the fact that this is not the first time the Broward County Sheriff's Office has had blood on their hands. This is not an unheard of circumstance. Mm-hmm. So are there any other stories that you would like to point out? About you know what other circumstances the Broward County Sheriff's Office has been involved with that has unfortunately this is not a one-off situation when it comes to law enforcement in Broward County.
No, there have been a lot of problems. I mean, what happened to Damien Martin was City of Sunrise. So I can't say, okay, that's BSO. You can't, but there's definitely BSO does have a history. It was BSO that with the teenager. A few years back, there was a group of teenagers, middle school students, hanging out in a McDonald's parking lot after school because, you know, that's what kids do is they hang out at like fast food restaurants after school in a parking lot. And something was happening. And at this point, I don't even remember, but the kid wasn't resisting. He was bending down to pick up his wallet. And the next thing you know, the cop was on him and smashed his face like 3 times, his head into the concrete.
Yep.
And, you know, fortunately, he didn't have any permanent injuries from this, but that to me was never properly addressed. And that was one of the first things that had happened once Tony got into his position. That was that was how it was almost like, okay, we're going to come back post Parkland. And granted, that was a very traumatic thing for BSO. And we're going to come back, but now it's almost in a very overcompensating manner of authoritarianism. We're going to be more like stormtroopers. And I just, it's not working for me. It's not working for me. No. So people ought not be dying in their custody. That shouldn't ever happen. That should never happen. Like, barring a very freak weird thing, like somebody has a heart attack. I mean, things happen. Nobody should be dying in the custody of these people. Like, that's just, it's completely unacceptable.
And so, unfortunately, this leads to the issue, probably the biggest issue when it comes to law enforcement, and that is the Fraternal Order of Police. And, you know, the police union is very powerful, and they do not go after their own. Whatever the circumstances are that leads to that, I'm not sure. But what I do know is something happened to Kevin Desir, and the Broward County Sheriff's Office does not want you to know about it. It's one thing to die in police custody. It's another thing entirely when there is a cover-up. And there is definitely a cover-up going on here, and it needs to be discussed, and it needs to be shared, because no one is going to talk about this. If you want to talk about what courage looks like in just everyday life, not just politics, this is it. Because challenging Sheriff Tony, very few people are willing to do things like that. And the fact that people are being silent about it speaks volumes. It does. And so we have to continue to talk about this. Like I said, his name is Kevin Desir, and the Broward County Sheriff is Gregory Tony. And he has made a statement to local, to the local press. I think it was in the Sun Sentinel. He was quoted where he said, basically, we did an investigation. We found we did nothing wrong.
He's satisfied with the conclusive results of their investigation.
We have assessed what we have done, and we determined that we didn't do anything wrong.
And so there you go.
It's like a comedy routine.
Well,
only there's nothing funny about it.
No, but to me, this is something where it should be an automatic thing. No law enforcement agency should be able to conduct their own investigation. And anytime that somebody dies in custody, there should automatically be an independent investigation by an outside agency. That shouldn't be, and that should be a state thing. Yes. This is like a state attorney. That's unacceptable. So that's just not going to fly with us, Tony. We're not going to go away on that. So
Mallory may be right. This may actually end up becoming an FBI situation.
I hope it is.
And that at least is one of the ways that we can. And hopefully we'll be able to get some closure for the Desir family. So definitely spread the word. Again, his name is Kevin Desir. I'm going to put it in the chat right now so you can look it up.
Yes, he has 2 young daughters that now don't have a father.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely look him up, guys. He's definitely, his family definitely needs some form of justice, some closure.
Yeah.
They did not deserve for this to happen. And the last thing we should mention about the story that isn't being mentioned, he was arrested for possession of marijuana.
I said that.
Oh, you did?
In the very beginning of the whole story. That was the whole thing.
The most important thing to remember
is that he was one of my people.
But he was also legally allowed to have it.
Yes, that's the thing. It's not even a criminal thing. But, when I hear somebody's getting arrested on a POM, I'm like, that's one of my people.
Yeah.
And so, we look out for our people. It's unacceptable.
No, it definitely is unacceptable. And this is just another example, like I said, of all the problems that does exist in law enforcement. And it is a real issue that isn't getting any better. But the fact that he did have mental illness and they probably disregarded any of his problems, it stinks. It really stinks. And, I feel terrible. I do. And, we do, like I said, we all deserve better. And everyone can say, well, you don't know the full circumstances. All I know is, had I been in that circumstance, had I lost a family member, I don't know how I would have reacted. I still can't believe that they were as collected as they were, because it's unconscionable to fathom that they have to deal with this. And now that they know that the sheriff's office is covering up an investigation that might bring them some closure and justice to what actually happened, that just piles on in a way that there are no words.
No. And I hope they sue them for everything.
And they probably will.
As well they should.
And so keep an eye on Sheriff Tony. The guy's unfortunately got a lot.
I'm not a fan.
He's got a spotlight on him now.
I'm just
and it's not getting any better. And by doing this, it just gets brighter. So we'll see.
What's our next story?
So our next story is actually a good one, a little bit of a pick-me-up, which is...
We have a pick-me-up?
Which is somewhat of a relief.
Because what is that? Is that the Yemeni flag?
Yeah, it sure is.
Okay, but nothing about Yemen is a pick-me-up.
Well, apparently Biden is authorizing our removal, U.S. support for for fighting in Yemen.
I want to see what exactly that looks
yeah,
like.
I got to see it as well. But
because does that mean, okay, so we won't give you things that we know if and when they're going to be used in Yemen, but we'll still give you things. And so you could still technically use them in Yemen as long as we don't know. And see, that's the problem. That's the problem. So if and when the Saudis are unable to continue what they're doing because they run out of our supplies, then I'll give a credit to Joe Biden. That's when that'll happen. Until then, yeah, that's nice. I want to see it stop happening.
Yeah. And again, it would be wonderful if it was honestly going to happen. I think we all would agree that, yeah, we need to get the hell out of there, but we have to actually see it.
I need to see it.
You got to see it. And that's the problem. We don't know for sure because right now, and I hate to have to bring it back to the negative side, it was just brought to my attention a little while ago that Biden is actually not going to keep the agreement about pulling our troops out of Afghanistan at the end of May. So this just doesn't end.
Well, and here's the thing. So in other words, and this is just to bring it back to the past couple of weeks. So how are we to trust somebody saying we're going to stop supporting the Saudi genocide in Yemen, and we think that'll happen, but yet we still don't have $2,000 checks?
That's a fair point.
So if you're not capable of issuing $2,000 checks when you said that was immediate thing that was going to happen, I'm just not, when you're talking about something going on in Yemen, I don't think I believe a word that comes out of his mouth.
No, I don't. I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree. I think that you have to try to do your best to keep his feet to the fire. But I do kind of wonder, what in years past, anytime a president had a mandate and the bully pulpit, they would always put pressure on any senator, any elected official that basically wasn't getting along with the agenda. And right now, we do have a unique agenda when it comes to getting people their $2,000 checks, which have now been knocked down to $1,400, which is ridiculous.
You know what? It's just they don't do what they say they're going to do.
But the idea that you're placing this much power on the shoulders of Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin, Arizona and West Virginia are what is determining for the rest of the country. You complain all the time about the Electoral College and the way it has to be a popular vote. And is this really representative democracy? Is Arizona and West Virginia probably, I know West Virginia in population is in the bottom 10, bottom 5 in the whole country. And Arizona is in the bottom 15 or 10. It's just interesting to me that we're in this circumstance where they think that we're going to be okay without getting what we need. And before we bring in Mrs. Smith, who is candidate for U.S. Senate in the state of North Carolina.
Woohoo, North Carolina.
Yeah, well, where Jen wants to be, of course.
I aspire.
Yes, well, we'll help Erica.
Right.
So there you go. And the last thing I will mention is the more people are now talking about this systematically horrific issue of why we're getting no relief, why we're not allowed to talk about the issues that are really facing us on a daily basis, we're dealing with a very serious problem of big tech censorship. This is a very serious thing. And if you think it isn't, everyone who has been cheering on censorship, look no further than to what has just happened to Jordan Sheridan with Status Quo, Graham Elwood with his channel, Tim Black with his channel, Kim Iverson with her channel, Lee Camp with his channel,
Jamal Thomas
with his channel. This is going to eat us alive.
Yeah.
And who do you think they're coming after? They are coming after the progressive left who is anti-establishment.
Yeah.
That's who gets it.
Now, we're not at risk because we're not monetized yet, but not yet.
That could change.
Yeah.
So with that said, don't underestimate what big tech is going to do to us if we don't fight back now. We have to. You have to speak up, even for those that you may not want to, because any censorship is basically censorship for everybody. Because if they can take one, they can take everybody. They are doing this. Last thing I will mention before we bring in Mrs. Smith, do not forget that mainstream media, corporate media, since Trump has been out of office, CNN in particular, has lost half their audience. You know how much revenue that is? It's a lot. So what do you think they're going to do? They are going to try to stop people like us from getting an audience that could captivate people in a way that they can't anymore. So, like I said, treat censorship as a very serious violation of our
Wait
First
till you
Amendment
go wait
rights.
till- Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.